Can the faithful maybe win this? We are fast approaching the final episode of the inaugural series of Celebrity Traitors, and boy, it's been a journey. It has been fantastic. So for the final time, let's look at the theories, key moments, and make a prediction about who is going to win. Let's start off with Jonathan's exit speech, because the BBC described it as iconic. He had the faithful on tenterhooks, thinking they had eliminated yet another faithful and had thrown the game away. Let's take another look at that moment.
What everyone's doing wrong. I cannot believe you've done it again. I cannot believe that I'm standing here for no good reason. So I don't want to be rude, but you're idiots. But I'm not judging because it's fiendish, so I am not blaming the players, I'm blaming the game. I am now, and I have been all through the game completely faithful. To the traitors!
Was it iconic? Yes, sure. It's definitely a performance. And you know what? As a celebrity, as a performer, I think he's entitled to that a little bit. It was a bit glib. It was a little bit self-aggrandizing. But that's fine. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Some people will probably find it a bit annoying. But you know what? Let him have his moment in the sun. A fantastic performance, really. All round. From actually his role as a traitor, I think he did a good job. To his exit speech, which really I think caused anxiety amongst people like especially Joe Marler, who were I think worried that maybe they've been wrong all along. Jonathan was a fantastic pick from the production team to be a traitor. The big dog theory, I suspect, was part of it. I think they wanted to have Jonathan versus Stephen. Stephen never really stepped up to the plate, despite being incredibly smart. He wasn't a strategic enough thinker to really challenge someone who had so much more information. And that's the point of the Traitors. You know, the Traitors is really Mafia, which is a social experiment to show that a small group of people with lots more information will do better than a large group with very little information. That's the game. And I think Stephen didn't quite fulfill his role, but Jonathan absolutely fulfilled his producer appointed role as a super traitor. Let's not forget, if they hadn't banished Jonathan, it would have all been over. You know, it was statistically required that they banished him. There was no alternative really available where the faithful could win and the traitors lose if Jonathan or another traitor hadn't been banished there, just because of the numbers. You know, we were looking at a dead tie between the traitor and the faithful, which meant that only luck would determine if the faithful could win, and that would assume they'd work out who the traitors were at that point. Let's talk about the winner. So throughout the series, I've said, and it's felt as though the traitors were almost nailed on to win. Not only have until Jonathan's banishment them not really been under much pressure, but also they have been murdering fantastically. The choices have been, you know, I've questioned them, but they have been random to the point of confusion. And that has been super, because you can't predict, you can't understand something that was random, that was designed to be confusing. You can't odds that in the same way that you can a murder that makes sense. And that's where they've done really well. And up until the point where they banished Jonathan, it kind of felt like it was all over. Frankly, if the traitors don't win this, then how? And I said last time that, well, let's listen to what I said last time. Genuinely, the only way that the traitors don't win this is one of two things. It's either, like I said, that Jonathan pushes Cat underneath the bus to try and save himself, and in doing so manages to get them both out. But what happened? Jonathan did throw Cat and Allan under the bus a little bit. Not as much as he could have done. He didn't throw their names as a parting shot, as Joe kind of theorised that they might have done with David. He did mention their names, and I think that is ultimately what was going to maybe cost the traitors.
Could be Allan.
Joe and Nick have fully teamed up now. Joe and Nick are so confident that each other must be faithful, that the way that the end game works is actually predisposed to help them. You know, they're confident that they know who the traitors are. You know, both of them think that it's Cat and Allan. They're right. Obviously, we know they're right. They don't know they're right. And they trust David by elimination. They're making the assumption that there were 3 traitors, correct? And they voted off one of them, which they have. And therefore there must be 2 left because there hasn't actually been an opportunity for a recruitment. They think they know at least that there's 2 traitors. And therefore they need to eliminate at least 2 people. At the 5, but only one person really needs to say, actually, I think there's still a traitor here, and then you vote again, you eliminate someone. That looks incredibly likely, and I think the most likely outcome is we basically get down to Joe, Nick, and David, and then one of them says, yes, I still think there's a traitor here, and then we just end up with Joe and Nick left. I think it's looking increasingly likely that both Allan and Cat will be eliminated in the final episode. They've got 2 faithful who are pretty nailed on that each other are faithful and that those 2 are the traitors. The only risk I actually see is because they're so sure about each other and they're so sure that it's Cat and Allan, that David may be actually almost unnerved by that sureness. He's been fumbling the entire series. You know, he has not known or been confident at any point really who the traitors are, and that creates a challenge for him that 2 people, Nick and Joe, are going to sit there and say, I'm sure that it's those 2. It's Allan and Cat. And he's going to be in a difficult position because they're right, but how can they be so sure? How have they reached that level of confidence? Maybe because they're traitors. That's the only risk I see. I don't think it's a very high risk. I think he trusts Joe and Nick quite a lot, particularly Nick. I think he sees him as quite intelligent, so I think that's helpful. But that is the only risk I see. I think that the faithful will clutch victory from the jaws of defeat. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to see your theory about how the next and final episode is going to play out. As is traditional now, the final 5 are asked to tell each other that they are a faithful. I am a faithful. However, Allan slightly messed up his telling of that. Let's take a look.
I am a faithful. I am a faithful. I just get nervous.
Oh, Allan.
Laughing probably doesn't make someone look the most innocent you could possibly look. Now, was he nervous? Absolutely, and with every right. You know, even as a faithful, you'd be nervous in that because you know there's quite a lot riding on it. But I suspect that nervousness has translated to a little bit more confidence for Nick and for Joe that Allan must be one of them, because they already suspect him. There's a bit of confirmation bias at play there. The idea that, well, I already think he's guilty, and now he's done something which confirms to me he is guilty. Whether it actually makes him look guilty or not is actually irrelevant. And frankly, it is something that you do, or something I do, regardless of my role. I would be rubbish in this game because I would be voted off immediately because I look very guilty. But that doesn't matter, because if people already suspected me, then great. They're looking for confirmation. For Allan, who since the end of day 1 has looked like a really solid performer, it was an incredible moment of failure, and probably looks back on it now and in frustration, because it's something that he had control over. Now, I don't think it's going to make a significant impact because, like I said, Joe and Nick already seemed pretty sure following the round table.
I'm convinced it's Allan and Cat. Adamant, it's Allan and Cat.
It can't have helped. Let's just say that it can't have helped. Speaking of Joe and Nick, let's talk about their alliance, because it's kind of just the strongest thing in the show. It's been going a few days now, and it seems to have grown. And obviously, you know, there's a little bit of suspicion I think Nick has about Joe. I quite like David's theory, and it is wrong, but I quite like David's theory that if the traitors weren't working together, then Joe could cement his position as, I'm definitely a faithful, by just throwing a traitor under the bus. Easy peasy. And Nick, I think, has some pause about, could that theory be true? At this point in the game, you have to choose. You have to choose to believe someone, because that you know, you're going to have those suspicions. You're going to be like, oh, maybe you are a traitor, maybe you are screwing me over. But if you don't trust anyone, you cannot win. There is no way to win. If you think, actually, everyone's a traitor around me, then it's pointless. So at this point in the game, you do have to choose who you're going to believe. And you'll be wrong some of the time, but you'll be right others. That is where I think these two are. I think Joe trusts Nick because of the sabotage. I think that's seen as something that's nonsensical for a traitor, and they're on the same wavelength. They've been voting in similar ways, but not like 100% the same way. I love the romance, and their faith in each other is quite heartwarming. Again, you know, there's a little bit of suspicion, but that's natural. You know, every relationship has a little bit of a kind of wiggle to it. So I love it. Do I have a crush on Nick? No. Stop at you. Do you think he like? He's very observant. He's quite intelligent. And I think that's pretty cool. Okay. I think it's fucking sick, and I think he's very funny. I fucking love him. No, not like. Anyway, can Kat maybe survive? I think at this point, Allan is a goner. Regardless, I think the faithful can't help him, and I think the forgetting of the shield, those little things add up. I think he's gone regardless. Kat is obviously under threat from Nick and from Joe. We know that. Like I said before, the only way that the traitors were going to lose was Jonathan throwing Kat and Allan under the bus, which he did do. Now, with how the late game is designed, Kat surviving is incredibly difficult. Because you need that one person to suspect you at the fire pit to continue the voting, it's very, very, very easy for someone who has just a little bit of suspicion on them to be eliminated. Joe and Nick both suspect her, and like I said, they're on the same side now. They think that each other are on the same side, and so overcoming that is incredibly difficult. The only thing on her side is the fact that they don't get any more information. You know, obviously, it's an information control game. The traitors have a lot, the faithful have basically none, but the faithful do get, after every banishment, knowledge about whether the person they just banished was on their side or not. They've lost that now. They've lost their only one piece of new information. So the only way that Kat can really survive this is by planting a seed of doubt, creating doubt in that final fire pit. Like, no, I think we've got everyone. You know, and that requires, again, two people to have already been eliminated. So it requires Allan and David to already go, or one of Joe and Nick to be eliminated, because they know that there were 3 traitors and that one of them's gone. So there has to be 2 left. So you have to eliminate 2 more players to have a chance of winning. I think that's the only way the faithful lose now, is that doubt, that fear, and then just choosing the wrong people entirely. Do you think either of the traitors could possibly win? Let me know if you think I've missed something, or if you have any predictions. Subscribe if you enjoyed. We analyse, critique, and enjoy the best of British television. That's been the final Traitors debrief. Bye bye.